Japanese have a deep love of cherry trees, which hold a special place in Japanese culture and society. Revered not just for its flowering beauty, but also because of the fragile and transient nature of its delicate blossoms. Known as sakura in Japanese, these pale blooms are symbols of more than just spring. They represent renewal and hope. The tree symbolises the concept of impermanence of life, the changing of the seasons and the cycle of life, death, renewal and rebirth. Because their exquisite beauty is so temporary and fleeting, it captures the essence of wabi-sabi, a slightly melancholy beauty that derives from age, impermanence or imperfection. In Japan, cherry blossom season typically starts in late March or early April and lasts for just a few short weeks. During this time, people flock to parks, temples and other public spaces to enjoy the beauty of the cherry blossoms and engage in a tradition known as hanami, which means flower viewing. I have spent the last couple of days constructing this sakura book nook insert for my bookshelves. While out in the garden, spring has arrived early, and my cherry trees are beginning to show their blossom. Hello and welcome to the bonsai garden, and today I'd like to talk to you about cherry blossom bonsai. But first I'll show you some of my garden trees. This is the largest of my garden trees and the one that I've had the longest, and I've had this probably about 6 years and it's been sat in this pot. It's a Nipponica Brilliant, and you can see at the base of the trunk it's really quite thick. If I just put my hand in there for comparison. This tree is, I believe, a bride cherry, and once it's in full blossom it looks almost like candy floss with the thick, dense white flowers. It's not looking so great at the moment. It's a little bit behind the other trees. You can see here that the blossom is ready to pop and some of them have started opening. It's certainly a spectacular tree once it opens, with brilliant white flowers that look a lot like confetti. Unfortunately, my cat has been using this one as a scratching post, and so I had to put some protection on the trunk. This large tree here is a Prunus kanzan. It's a traditional Japanese flowering cherry with an ancient origin and a pink double flower. The Japanese word kanzan means mountain border, perhaps suggesting that these trees were first discovered growing in a mountainside area. Of course, what you're really interested in are cherry trees as bonsai, and I've got here a couple of wild cherry trees. This particular one I bought with a couple of others from the Woodland Trust, which is a great source for buying young trees and saplings, and it hasn't particularly developed a great deal, quite possibly because it's in this pot which has stunted its development somewhat, and that might benefit from going into a pond basket to help develop the roots, which will invigorate the plant. Now, these do tend to grow with quite large leaves in the first flush, and what I found from experience is that if you cut those leaves off once they've hardened off, then the second flush of leaves are considerably smaller and more suited to bonsai. However, what you need to bear in mind is that the tree has put energy and expended energy on developing those leaves, which it then expects to regain through photosynthesis. And by removing those leaves, not only have you removed the energy from the tree, but you've also prevented it from regaining energy until the second flush of leaves develop. So it's not a practice that you want to be doing regularly. This second tree is also a wild cherry, but I dug this one up out of my front garden. I think the birds have been at the cherries and pooped one out, and that tree was the result. And again, this is one that might benefit from going into a pond basket to help develop the roots. It has got an interesting twisty base to the trunk there, and perhaps I need to take that out of there and have a look and investigate the roots and see what's happening there. I've also got another dwarf flowering cherry tree. It's not a Kojo-no-mai, but it was in the cheap section at the local nursery, and I took pity on it and rescued it. So I've cut some of the branches off to try and give it a bit of shape, and it still needs quite some considerable work on there before that's a credible bonsai. It's got a nice silvering trunk to it, and it's one to take forward and see how I get on with that. Kojo-no-mai, or Fuji cherry, is an ornamental dwarf flowering cherry tree with small green serrated leaves, which make it the perfect subject for bonsai. It develops a drooping, delicate white flower with a hint of pink in early spring. After the flowers have faded, leaves follow and tiny black berries develop, which the birds love. They're hardy outdoor trees which will take a lot of punishment and are easy to keep and quite forgiving. They have a dense, zigzagging, twiggy growth that I think makes them ideal for developing windswept bonsai designs. In autumn, the leaves turn a fiery orange before falling to reveal the branching. In spring, they can be found easily and cheaply in good garden centres, nurseries, and even in larger supermarkets. Just be careful of pruning them through the winter months, as they can be prone to silverleaf fungal infection. I've got a number of Kojo-no-mai or Fuji cherry trees, of which this was the first that I acquired, and it immediately suggested to me a windswept tree. And I've had this tree now for almost 4 years, I believe, and I planted it into this ceramic pot a couple of years back. It hasn't ramified and developed as I would have hoped. I perhaps need to have a look at the roots on this. This is another one that might benefit from going into a pond basket just to help it invigorate the tree. It has got a lot of flowers on it. It just isn't perhaps as twiggy as I would expect it to be at this stage. This is the second of my Kojo-no-mais, which I bought cheaply from a local garden centre. And again, this one immediately suggested to me a windswept literati form with this curved trunk. So there was a second trunk on here which I took off, and I've been developing that. And about a year ago I popped it into this ceramic pot. It has got what some people might consider a flaw, which is this sort of eagle's claw root. But what I found was that because that's got a sort of domed shape to the roots, I believe that balancing it in this round pot has been the right move for the tree. I've got here a couple of interesting trees. The first is probably the most advanced in terms of the blossom of my Kojo-no-mai cherry trees. This one is in this lovely Tom Butterworth sort of mint green pot. What's of interest here is that this second tree with 3 trunks, it's kept in a slightly shaded part of the garden, so it's not quite as developed yet, although you can see the buds have started opening. But that tree was actually air layered from the top of this tree at that point there. I found that Kojo-no-mai do root quite easily if you try to air layer them, so it's a great way of propagating them and getting more trees. And this is probably the largest of my Kojo-no-mai trees, and this one came from RHS Bridgewater and from the nursery next to the RHS gardens there. It's only very recently had its initial styling and a bit of wiring on there just to place some of the branches, but it's a tree that I need to address and give a bit more attention. The truth is that Fuji cherry as a bonsai is a fairly robust and tolerant tree with some attention to its specific needs, including proper watering, fertilising, pruning and positioning of your tree. It should thrive. Here are some tips to help you care for your Fuji cherry tree. Watering. The Fuji cherry bonsai should be watered regularly to keep the soil moist but not waterlogged. The amount of water needed will depend on the size of the pot, the environmental conditions, and the type of soil it's grown in. It is important to avoid letting the soil dry out completely between waterings, as this can cause stress to the tree. Fertilising. The bonsai should be fertilised regularly with a balanced fertiliser during the growing season, spring and summer. This will help promote healthy growth and encourage flowering. It's important to follow the instructions on the fertiliser package, as over-fertilising can harm the tree. Pruning. It is important to maintain the shape and size of the bonsai. Regular pruning will also help to stimulate new growth and improve the overall health and design of the tree. It's best to prune in spring before the new growth appears. Prune off any dead or diseased branches and trim back any long or unwanted branches to the desired shape. Avoid pruning through the damp months of winter, as the tree can be susceptible to fungal infections and silver leaf. Positioning. The Fuji cherry bonsai should be positioned in a location with plenty of natural light, but protected from direct sunlight and extreme temperatures. In the summer months, it's best to move the bonsai to a more shaded location to prevent sunburn. In winter, it's important to protect the tree from extremes of frost and cold winds, though they are quite robust. Repotting. The bonsai should be repotted every 2 or 3 years to ensure proper root growth. Since new leaves emerge immediately after flowering, I suggest repotting should be done in early spring before the new growth appears and the flower buds open. Use a well-draining soil mix and be careful not to damage the roots during the process. Overall, caring for a Fuji cherry bonsai tree requires regular attention and patience, but the result is a beautiful and rewarding addition to any bonsai collection. So I hope you found that useful and interesting. Let me know if you've got any Kojo-no-mai Fuji cherry bonsai trees in your collections and what your experience of it is as a tree, and leave your thoughts and comments below. Thanks for watching and hope to catch you in the next one. I've got a number of Kojo-no-mai or Fuji cherry trees, of which was the first.
It's a pretty tree. With flowers. The tree with flowers.
I've got a number of